Greetings, everyone. As you can see, I have not yet left, although I expect it will be maybe tomorrow. We'll see. But fortunately, in the interim, several people who had told me that they were going to start uploading videos have in fact done so, and I am going to refer you to both of their channels. A few of my subscribers have found them probably just by looking at the videos that I've viewed. Both these people are from Michigan. Both of them have been talking to me in private messages for maybe a few weeks here, expressing interest in doing channels. And the first one, let's see, what's the name of the channel? Oh, I don't remember her name of her channel, but I'll put a link to it. Her first video is about the law. It's a review and critique of the law by Bastiat, or Bastiat, however it's said. Pretty good video. I took the time to watch it, and she goes through and lays out its contents, why it's pertinent, why it's important. So if you've never read that book or pamphlet, some people call it a pamphlet because it's relatively short, it'll give you a good overview of the content. And she also offers a bit of a critique from the anarcho-capitalist position. And also, if you hadn't noticed the use of the pronoun, it is a her, she. So it's a good video, and there are not that many female libertarians out there making videos, so definitely that is a different perspective. It's a good video, so I recommend you all go see it. I will put the link beneath. And then the other channel that I did happen to record the name is from Roarkvids. He's uploaded a few videos. He had a previous channel. I don't know how he's going to juggle it. He has done a review of Thomas Sowell's book on Marxism. It's not up yet, but he had it on a previous channel. I expect that pretty soon. Really good channel from what I can see so far. His summary of the book that he posted on a previous site is pretty good. Gives you a good summary, also piques your interest, lets you know if it's something you'd be interested in reading yourself. So definitely go check both of those people out. If I'm going to ask that people do videos, I'm certainly going to be willing to forward, what small group of subscribers I have to go check them out. My guess is that most of my subscribers would find these videos at least worth watching, at least checking out. I liked them, I enjoyed them both, and I'm glad that I'm able to upload a shout out before I leave. So there's that. Now, this main topic I want to talk about here is one that has it's one of the topics that's been on the edge of my consciousness for a long time, and it doesn't seem like a super pressing issue, but it really does strike on some pertinent things, and that is risk and regulation in society, and then that kind of ancillary to that, what does government involvement in this mean? And the proximate reason that I think about this is I just went to fill up my gas tank because I am actually anticipating leaving tomorrow. I stopped at a 7-Eleven here in Manchester, and there was no little catch lever on the gas pump. A lot of gas pumps, you'll notice, you pull the lever down, and there's a little lever you can put down to keep the pump on, so that while your tank is filling, you have two hands available to do whatever else. And this little valve was missing at the 7-Eleven. Now, as far as I can tell, these are available in New Hampshire generally. However, whenever I've worked in West Virginia, none of the gas stations have these things. And the first couple times I noticed, I thought, well, something happened on this station. They got torn off, who knows. But when I started asking around, I found out that actually they were banned in West Virginia. I don't know if they've been banned in other states. I don't know when the ban happened. But the state legislature obviously took it upon itself to get rid of this item of convenience. And every time that I go to fill up my gas tank and I don't see one of these things, I'm reminded of this. And it's been years now since I've been aware of this issue. Now, that's a relatively minor issue, but it kind of touches on a deeper one. What is an appropriate level of risk for a given activity, and what is the role of the government, if any, in assessing, mandating, or managing that risk? And my kind of joke is that every time I leave West Virginia, I become terrified every time I go to a gas station that there's going to be fireballs and explosions and mass death and destruction because these little levers are are not banned, and so people are just wantonly spewing and spraying flammable gasoline everywhere, and it's basically a death trap. And thank God the beneficent rulers of West Virginia, in their infinite wisdom, have banned the practice. Um, Obviously, that's hyperbolic, but the idea of banning it is also hyperbolic. It's not like the result of this prohibition on these little levers uh, has no cost. It has the cost of going and removing the levers and the waste that is derived thereof. I mean, we're talking about little stamp-sized pieces of metal, not a big deal. Individually, if you talk about the tens of thousands of them that are going to be in a state, and the amount of time it takes to remove them, it's not inconsiderable, although it's not something to maybe lose sleep over. But the costs go much deeper than that. When I'm in West Virginia and I have to fill my tank, I have to stand there with my hand holding it. That means I don't have two hands to say wash my windows while I'm. This is probably the main thing. It's the basic service that you like to do on your car when you're stopped, is clean off the windows, the back windows, whatever. Maybe you want to check your email. Maybe you need to make a phone call. Maybe there's some other task you have to do, and because these tabs are not there, you have to spend, what, 1, 2, 3, however many minutes filling the tank manually rather than performing those tasks. So this isn't true with everybody, because there's plenty of people who probably wouldn't have done anything anyway, but for all of those who would, that many minutes out of every day, every night, all month, every year from now on, that's not very inconsiderable. The length of time that I spend at a gas station has increased because of this. Because if I do need to clean my windows, which is common when I'm working in West Virginia, my car gets dirty. Oil wells are not well known for being super cleanly. Often they get covered in mud and dust, and it's necessary for me to clean them if they're going to be safe on the highway. And rather than be able to do that while the pump is going, I have to do that after or before I start pumping. Now, that adds several minutes every time. Now, that doesn't seem like a huge deal just for me, but you multiply that by the number of people that applies to, and suddenly you're talking about millions of people, thousands of hours per year, something like that, uh, that are wasted. And again, it's not the worst thing, but then the other point is, what is it exactly preventing? I realize that there's a risk that by forcing people to be manual, that it's less likely that one of these could be left on unwittingly, spraying gas everywhere. I think there's other safety mechanisms kind of designed to keep that from happening, because the pumps always seem to stop once the tank is full, whether or not you have the lever down. So it is not the only safety mechanism in place. Why it's such an important one, I'm not sure. Uh, it's not that important in the other states, and like I said, I've never seen massive fireballs exploding in states where it's legal to have these little levers. And I think it's very silly to point out that it's hypothetically possible for something to happen, and then to act on that without any kind of acknowledgement of the likelihood of that hypothetical situation. I see this a lot, for instance, in gun control debates. People will say, well, hypothetically, you could take your gun and you could shoot up, dozens of people. Statistically, though, I mean, the number of people who have shot up dozens of people can be counted on one hand. Um, so the odds that you and your gun are going to do it, statistically, it's infinitesimal. If you're talking about literally dozens, if you're talking about just a murder, even then, it's extremely unlikely. And so to say, well, it's hypothetically possible, which is true, it is, bears no resemblance to how likely it is, and to issue a prohibition, to make something illegal, to have this vast regulatory apparatus to confront something that it's not clear how risky, with no attempt to kind of do a cost-benefit analysis of what's being gained and what's being lost. But at a more fundamental level, uh, there isn't an objectively correct degree of risk for any given situation or any given person. And kind of another thing that's entered my mind on this is, because I am going back to work, I had to take part in some OSHA training. Um, Now, it's very interesting. It was a 10-hour training course that you took online. It's farmed out to a corporation that I'm sure is connected to somebody who's getting a boon. So there's a law that people in certain positions and fields have to take this training, which means they have to patronize this firm, whatever it is. And fully 20%, 2 hours of the 10-hour course was dedicated to explaining why OSHA is so important and why it's such a good idea. And that there's probably an entire video to talk just about OSHA there. But in connection with this idea, it will tout all these numbers like, well, if you do this and if you do that, uh, the likelihood of an accident or a fatality will be decreased somewhat. But it's very clear and it's explicit that none of the things that they suggest will lower the risk to zero or even really close to zero. And it's kind of arbitrary to say that, well, 3 deaths per 100,000 labor hours is okay, but 6 deaths, that's too much. If the argument always raised is 1 death is too many, but then 3 deaths is too many, and is 3 deaths too many, and so the OSHA standards should be made much, much, much more stringent. And of course, most of the people who would reflexively say that, again, are not considering the costs, and will make a vehicle to the point where it would be statistically almost impossible to die in a car accident would be highly, highly expensive. Although maybe it's getting less expensive with Google cars, we'll see. To the point where no one would be able to drive. I think Milton Friedman, one of his best moments was when someone asked him about the Pinto and said these are very dangerous vehicles. If they get in a rear-end collision, they can explode, they could kill the person. And his response is, well, even if we're not talking about a Pinto, it's possible for someone to be killed in a car. And they could be made more powerful. They could be made like tanks. They could be engineered with ejector seats and all kinds of airbags and flotation devices in case you drive off a bridge, and all kinds of safety controls. And we could build a vehicle that would be many, many times safer than anything that's currently on the road. The only problem is that such a vehicle would require vastly more labor, vastly more investment of time and capital and resources, and would be extremely expensive. We'd be talking about only the very wealthy being able to ever plausibly purchase such a thing, and there probably wouldn't be a market. You don't put that kind of investment for something that you expect to sell 3 or 4 items on. That's not something you're going to fill the highways with. And this kind of principle goes through everything that we might speak about. There's no objective correct amount of risk that people can have. And another really good example that's probably even more pertinent is with the FDA. The FDA says, look, we are not certain that this drug will not have side effects on people, so we won't give it to you until they've spent 10 years and $1 billion going through our trial process. And if people die waiting for the drug in the meantime, which absolutely they are by the tens of thousands per year, even on single drugs, let alone all drugs aggregated, that's just too bad. And it's very, very strange when people come to the argument that terminally ill patients or extremely ill patients don't have the right to say, I'm willing to take the risk that there might be side effects or that it might not be effective, because it might be effective and I'd be willing to live with that. I think that it's very hard to argue that the bureaucrats at the FDA are in a better position to assess the values and the risks and the benefits and the costs for a patient. And it's not just a patient, it's for anybody. Driving a motorcycle is more risky than driving a car. That doesn't mean that it is wrong. Skydiving or base jumping are more risky than taking a walk. That doesn't mean that it's wrong. Running a marathon on the road is far more dangerous than, say, running a marathon on a treadmill. I know there's another YouTuber on here, I won't say his name, but he's an actuary, and he is very risk averse, and he runs, but he only runs on treadmills because he thinks that running out in the open is too dangerous because of cars and pedestrians and bicycles and uneven terrain and all sorts of other things, exposure, dehydration, whatever. And he's not wrong, but neither is the person who says, I'm willing to take that risk because I enjoy, the aesthetic pleasure of being outside. I like the wind in my face. I like the sensory perception of, experiential results of being out in the world, and that's not wrong either. Uh, People have this very strange idea that there's an objective level of risk, which tends to be arbitrary, and it tends to be whatever the government says it is. Now, if the government says this is a satisfactory amount of risk, then people are pleased. Now, if there ends up being some kind of malfunction or whatever, uh, then they'll probably say that the government should have been even more restrictive. And this is kind of related to the BP oil spill. Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe BP was up to standard. They had everything that the government thought that they should, and things still went wrong. According to the government, though, they were up to snuff. Now, there's other issues with that. The limited liability is a pretty interesting kind of different way to look at it. But, yeah, like, they were fine as far as the government. And the other things is, like, the government allows so many maggots. I think it's like 1 maggot per gallon of tomato sauce. So many bacteria, so much salmonella. There's so many things that they allow that they allow because they practically can't get rid of them. And yet, when we're talking about our alternative societies, people are like, well, you can't promise that there won't be any. Well, the government can't promise that either. I'm also struck from my years in food service how ridiculous it is to assume that quality control is a function of government oversight. Government oversight is negligible in most cases. The number of people that they have capable of, like, say, going to restaurants and making sure everything's okay is very, very limited. My phone's ringing. I'll get it in a second. And when I worked, I would probably see a food inspector maybe once every year, who'd come in for just a few hours and look around, and maybe they'd make a few notes here and there, but there was no chance that they were going to be overseeing everything that was happening in the restaurant all the time, or anywhere close to that. And the penalties that they could offer, although they can be severe, are usually not that severe, and they're not that much of a disincentive, since you usually are able to correct the mistakes if you want. So, what's keeping the standards up is, of course, competition with other places. There's a fear that if standards are low, the profits will suffer, and typically corporate standards are far in excess of government standards. And that's interesting, because people say, what on the free market, there's going to be all this Upton Sinclair dystopianism. If that was true and government sanction and government oversight was the only thing that can reliably raise standards, then all standards would only be the government minimums and no more. This is very similar to the minimum wage argument. We can't get rid of the minimum wage, because then everybody will be paid nothing. Without a government mandated minimum, we'll all be working for $1 a day or whatever. This is just patently absurd, because the vast majority of people, and I think it's over 90%, already make more than minimum wage or any other government mandated minimums, which means there's some other force in society, there's some other function, there's some other incentive structure that is making quality or wages exceed government mandated minimums. And this is a reality, it's an empirical fact. Now, the process that leads to this, which roughly speaking we call economics, and not just Austrian economics, but almost all economics, is just unknown to the people who make these claims. They're ignorant of it, and they just assume, based on their mythical caricatures of profit-seeking, rapacious capitalists, that they're not going to do. They're only going to do dystopian things that they find highly objectionable. Whereas the government, of course, is only going to do altruistic and wonderful things that they find laudable. This is when people who talk like that clearly are not in touch with reality. I mean, it's okay to speak hypothetically about beneficent, omniscient states and market conditions and hypothetical scenarios where you could have a monopoly, or you could have a capitalist who could conceivably cause harm, which is, of course, totally possible. I don't want to discount that and say it can't happen or it never has, because it certainly has and it certainly can. But the idea that reality is going to be dominated by a dystopian hypothetical, or on the other hand, a utopian hypothetical that doesn't exist and has no basis in empiricism, is the is what you advocate. It's so funny to me that people will advocate government based on, you know, this perception of how it ought to be or how maybe it could be in their mind. There are good reasons, both because of the knowledge problem and the incentive problem, to assume that it could never be the way that they're talking about. But even if it hypothetically could, that's not the way the government is. So you can't justify, you know, a current militarist police state empire based on the idea that it's going to be, well, direct democracy that's totally voluntary. That's okay, and so you know, our government is justified. No, I've heard David Friedman point this out. You know, we can have discussions about a hypothetical social contract between the people and the state, but historically speaking, states that exist today and have in the past are based on the sword, not on that. And so, you know, it's great. It's all well and good to talk about that, but it's not applicable in the actual cases we have in the real world. Pretty much. So that's interesting. I guess that's a little bit tangential to risk. But yeah, how much people are willing to risk, and for how much money, or for under what circumstances, and for what gains? There's no objectively correct answer to those questions. And I think that the only philosophical reasoning that makes sense is as long as it's voluntary. And there's some areas where there's grayness, like if there's some kind of fraud involved, if somebody is misleading another person and misrepresenting the risk. It's one thing if they get it wrong, like if people think something is safe and it turns out that it's not, you know, that's not necessarily malicious, and that's kind of tragic, but you know, the government can make that mistake as well. The government can think something's going to be safe and it's not for whatever reason. But in cases where it's actually bad faith, where people realize that, you know, maybe there's a high risk of a disease or infection from a food or from a medication, or that they know that most of the people who do a certain job are likely to become injured in some way, and they misrepresent this. Yeah, you know, that those are actually serious issues, worthy issues of discussion. But that doesn't mean that a hypothetical monopoly on risk management makes any sense, or would even alleviate that problem. I mean, it's interesting. It doesn't actually even address that potential. It's still hypothetically possible, even with a Leviathan state. So, you know, that doesn't really even answer the question. You have to look at it at an individual level. What does each person, what are they willing to do? And if they're voluntarily willing to do it, it's very hard to argue philosophically that that is incorrect. You know, I mean, you can say, well, statistically, you smoking means that your chances of cancer go up X, and that's totally legitimately accurate to say. However, there's no way to then qualify that and say, well, the value that you derive, the aesthetic pleasure that you derive, or the social pleasure that you derive from imbibing the cigarette, how much is that valuable to the likelihood of medical ailment? Those are apples and oranges, and there's no metric to compare the two of them. And since each person is going to have a different subjective valuations of the two, it's very hard to say on net that, or it's impossible to say there's some objective rubric for which everyone would be better off. So that's pretty much it. Not a very long video here. Go ahead and check out those channels. They're both really good. And I'll talk to you all some other time.